Hello and welcome to the channel of Hashaliach once again. I trust that God is blessing you and I trust that He's blessing you mightily. Today is the 12th of November 2024. You know, good times are on the way. There's a lot of rocky times coming as well, but we've turned a corner. Good times are coming, especially for the household of God, those who are pressing into the Lord. You know, I've seen uh, an article this morning or something that had been written, a post, and it said the United States is under God's judgment, not His mercy. Do not be deceived. And I saw that and it got me thinking as to how I used to be so black and white about everything. You were either under the judgment of God or you were under His favour. But the two couldn't coexist together. So if bad things were happening in a nation, that nation was being judged by God. And that's the way I saw it. But God's taught me a lot over the years. So let me just make a comment before I get to the message. The United States is under the judgment of God, but it's the wicked rulers in the United States that are under the judgment of God. God has heard the cries, the prayers of His people who have cried out for justice. And so that justice, that judgment is coming. It's here. It is coming to the wicked. And so the other side of it is mercy and blessing are falling on God's people who have cried out to God for this justice, for His righteous judgments. The two go hand in hand. Is the entire United States being judged to be destroyed? No. Wicked rulers that are ruling the United States are being judged. But grace, mercy, and blessing are falling on God's people. The two go hand in hand. Anyway, I just wanted to make that comment because I saw it this morning and I thought, anyway. 2 Samuel chapter 9. Now, it's a very short chapter, but there is great insight in this chapter, really good insight. And I just want to go through it because I think you're going to be greatly encouraged by what's in this chapter. Complete Jewish Study Bible, 2 Samuel 9, verse 1. David inquired, is there anyone still alive from the family of Saul to whom, for Jonathan's sake, I can show kindness? So, right at the outset, David is looking for someone that might still be alive from the house of Saul because he wants to show kindness to them because of the friendship that he had with Jonathan, who was a friend of David, very great friend of David, and also Saul's son. Verse 2, in Saul's household there had been a servant named Ziba, and they summoned him to David. The king asked him, are you Ziba? And he answered, at your service. Glory to God. Verse 3, the king said, is there anyone still alive from the family of Saul to whom I can show God's grace? Ziba said to the king, there is still Jonathan's son with the lame legs. Now here he's talking about Mephibosheth, who was the son of Jonathan. Now after the battle had Saul had been defeated, there was a lot of mayhem, and Mephibosheth, who was 5 at the time, his nurse was in great haste to get out of the area, and she dropped Mephibosheth, which resulted in him being lame in both his feet, and he was only 5 years old. So basically, he's going to end up lame for the rest of his life. Verse 4, the king said to him, where is he? And Ziba answered, he's there in the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, in Lodabar. Verse 5, King David sent and took him from the house of Machir, the son of Amiel in Lodabar. Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David, fell on his face, and prostrated himself. David said, Mephibosheth, and he answered, Here is your servant. David said to him, Don't be afraid, for I am determined to be kind to you for the sake of Jonathan your father. I will restore to you all the land of Saul your grandfather, and you will always eat at my table. You're always going to eat at my table. But the first thing David said to him, he says, Don't be afraid. Why? Because it was common practice in those days when a new king came along. There was always concern that the previous king, the family of the previous king, there may be animosity, jealousy, bitterness. Someone would rise up and challenge. This was very, very common in these days. I mean, you read through 1 and 2 Kings, 1 and 2 Chronicles, you see a new king takes over. Next thing you know, he's assassinated within sometimes just a few short months. Other times it could take a few years. But there was always this feuding, there was always this rivalry, and it was common practice to wipe out the whole family of the previous king so that no one would rise up and challenge the new king. So he says to Mephibosheth, and Mephibosheth understood this as well, and I'm going to give you more information which really brings that out. So David says, Don't be afraid, because Mephibosheth was definitely afraid. But David is not like other kings. He wanted to show kindness because of Jonathan's sake, and he wanted to show God's grace to this man. And he makes that very, very clear. Now, we're told that Mephibosheth was living in Lo-debar. Lo-debar. Lo-debar means no, or no devar, dvarim, which is words. It means no word, no thing, or nothing, or pastureless. Lo-debar was named such because it was a nothing place. It was a literal nothing town in the middle of nowhere. In fact, it was an Aramean town. And this town was an ideal place for someone to live in obscurity and having a much better chance of not being found by the king. If you're worried about being found and killed, it's just a very obscure place in the middle of nowhere. Okay, I'm going to go and live there. Nobody will know who I am, and I'll be safe there. But David found him in this nothing place. No place in the middle of nowhere. Verse 9. The king called to Ziba, Saul's servant, and said to him, I have given everything Saul and his family own to your master's grandson. You're to work the land for him, you, your sons, and your slaves. Harvest the crops so that your master's grandson will have food to feed his family. But Mephibosheth, your master's grandson, will always eat at my table. Ziba had 15 sons and 20 slaves. Ziba said to the king, Your servant will do everything my lord the king commands his servant, although Mephibosheth has been eaten at my table as one of the king's descendants. Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Micah. Everyone living in Ziba's house was a servant of Mephibosheth. But Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem. He always ate at the king's table, and he was lame in both legs. So let me try and gather my thoughts here. This is what I felt God was saying to me. 4 times you read about you're going to eat at my table, you're going to eat at the king's table. You'll always eat. In fact, it finishes up. He always ate at the king's table. And he was lame in both legs. The world is full of the broken, the lame, the downtrodden, those that have been beaten down. And God is crying out to those that are living in Lo-debar, that are living in a nothing place. It's pastureless. There's no food for the sheep. It's completely pastureless. It's nothing. There is no word. There's no word there. Think about that. No word. Nothing. Pastureless. Come to the king's table and you'll find plenty of the word. Plenty of the word at the king's table. And also plenty of food. Physical food. But in a spiritual sense, it's when you come to the king's table, that's where the word is. And there's no lack of the word. Those that are lame, those that are broken, living in Lo-debar, come out of Lo-debar. Come to the king's table. Come to the king's table, because that's what he's calling you to. He wants you to come to the table where you can have ample food. Spiritual food, physical food. My friends, we should all be sitting at the king's table. And as in a little bit of an aside, in Amos chapter 6, verse 13, God speaks through his prophet Amos to mock the people of Israel. You see, they had captured Lo-debar in a place called Karnaim. Now, Lo-debar means nothing. Karnaim, strength. And he mocks them and he says, you take great pleasure, you're rejoicing over your victory of Lo-debar. You're rejoicing over nothing. You're rejoicing over nothing. And you're rejoicing over defeating Karnaim, which means strength. You're rejoicing over nothing in your own strength. Come to me. Come and sit at the king's table where there's plenty, and there's especially plenty for the lame. And this world is full of the lame and broken and downtrodden. So be encouraged, friends. The king is calling out to you and he says, come to the table, come to my table. God bless you. Until next time.